All right, next up, you guys, we have Kris Stark. And I had this written down here somewhere, and I apologize. I don't know what I've done with it. There's so much going on that I have trouble staying on top of it all. Kris was also a House rep. I want to say, well, Kris is going to tell us what district. Dr. Paul John Reinhardt was also a House rep in our district here in Citrus County. And Kris Stark is a House rep, or was a House rep for the primary in District 37. But there are some interesting things that happened in the race, and Kris Stark and Dr. Paul are here to talk about that. So let me bring them both in. Hey, Kris.
How you doing?
Hey, Dr.
Hey,
Paul.
how's it going? How's it going?
It is so awesome. And I got to tell you, when Luis Valdez stops by, you guys, I don't know how much you guys know about me, but I'm like a gun girl. So like my heart thumps when we talk about guns, like literally. Anyway, I'm a Glock girl, and I'm also an NRA instructor. I focus primarily on mature women. So I love it whenever he stops by.
An armed society is a polite society.
Well, it actually truly is. So we've got a couple of comments here from Barbiana Casio, but let's get right to your story. So, Kris, you were a House candidate for District 37, and you told me that you received a call in like April. We're going to go over that, but you didn't think a lot of it. So you ran your race, and then you said, wait, hold up. So start there.
So basically, after what I like to lovingly refer to as the selection, not the election, it just rang in my head, this phone call. And so I decided to go through to see what other monies were given to other candidates. And I ended up going through all 120 House races and the 40 Senate races. And I found that there were a total of 22 different candidates who received RPOF / Republican House Campaign Committee money. And all those people won their races. After I correlated the data, I found they all won their races, and I was just absolutely in shock. Then I started doing some more digging, went through the RPOF rules and bylaws, found that basically they didn't endorse people, so they didn't really have to go through the proper process of an endorsement, which is a unanimous vote. In the primaries, they shouldn't really be messing with candidates, because two Republicans, let them square off fairly and then let the people decide. Well, they gave my competitor about $70,000, to which she buried me with.
Okay, so I do want to get into what is in the. I've gathered all of the information regarding the Republican Party of Florida. I think I'm going to call them the Rhino Party of Florida, just saying. And I want to get into that, but I want to hear Dr. Paul's story real quickly before we start talking about this. Dr. Paul, you're up.
Yeah, I came to a similar situation as Kris did. I compiled the list of other state house candidates that did not receive aid in the form of in-kind campaign staff. Representative Mazzullo received at least $4,000, and that's how this whole voyage of retribution happened with me. I called the state treasurer up, and he was coincidentally my state REC guy, and I said, what gives that Representative Mazzullo? He's worth all this money, worth $64 million. He put in $1.5 million in his own campaign. Why does he get the $4,000 to have a campaign staff? His campaign manager was nosing around at my college getting opposition type of research and all this. I had to let go, a guy I wanted to hire. Actually, I wanted to hire my videographer. And I said the $4,000 would go great with me. And then he says, well, I never heard this before. He somehow called the comptroller, calls me back and says, well, the Democrats do it. I said, wait a minute here. Give me the 4,000 in kind for campaign staff. I need the campaign staff. If you know me well, when I run these races, my campaign staff is virtually myself and my brother George. Okay, and I'm the guy that they make fun. One of the local bloggers, this idiot Mike Wright, says, "Oh, you only got 1,000." Yeah, you don't get donations. Even my state committee man says, well, the trouble with you is you don't have money. I said, well, the trouble with your party is you don't give me any. You give it to everybody else, And I made a list and I got it to a state rep candidate that ran against the whip, Ty Appia. And I actually sent him the list I compiled with, like, I guess around 22 candidates or 20 such candidates that got this in kind. They got money for polling, which essentially meant, hey, you're going to vote for our guy, right? And they got all this freaking money. I think I totaled it's about 362,000 just for the campaign staff and the polling that weren't given to the challenges of incumbents. And that's what I was looking at. And coincidentally, Ty, I think, got a call from Kris and told Kris to contact me, and we compared lists, and he was looking more closely. I found some questionable donations by PACs to the incumbent, and handling fees that Kris made me aware of the RPOF of the PACs. And I'm telling you, I feel that my races in Citrus County have been fixed ever since 2018, and it's disgusting. People are getting endorsed by people on canvassing boards and all of this, and the fix has always been in to the challenges of the incumbents. I'm fed up with it. The system is like, to quote the Watergate guys of years ago, they said there's a cancer in my party. I think it went beyond that,
I agree. There's a cancer in your party. But Kris, I want to ask you, just to make it clear for everybody, you actually reached out in all the House races where there were 2 or more Republican candidates. Is that correct?
I did. I contacted everybody on the list that was defeated by RPOF money, basically. Yeah.
Okay. And what did you find?
I basically gathered about 18 candidates, well, 19 including myself, who were quite upset about it, who I guess didn't know where to go, didn't know what to do. So and Dr. Paul being one. So him and I joined forces, and we're just trying to figure out which directions to go. I mean, as he brought up the other night to me, it's tortuous interference. Basically, because we are a business. Also, the fact that out of our qualifying fees, $600 of it went to the RPOF.
Are you serious?
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know about that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So they literally used our own money to defeat us.
So money that you paid for qualifying fees actually went to the Republican Party, who gave it to somebody else in your race. Is that what you're saying to me?
Yes, okay. 100%. Yeah. My feeling is they need to butt out of the primaries. I mean, that's the only fair thing to do. I just can't imagine, even in the rules and bylaws, it says they're not really allowed to favor one person over another. And if they are to have an endorsement, that it has to be at the state level, it has to be a unanimous vote. I don't believe they didn't actually endorse anybody. They just handed out money, so they subverted the whole voting process.
Yes.
That's right. How I got around it.
Exactly.
Okay. So I have to tell you, I have been working with the team at tworedpills.org. One of the things that team says that should happen is ban or repeal any law that permits signature gathering to get on the ballot. So there really should not be signature gathering. There should not be a fee to be paid. Would you agree with that?
I would say there definitely shouldn't be a fee. I mean, it's kind of extortion.
Right. So what you did was, after this happened, you took the time to do a little bit of research into the RPOF, the Republican Party of Florida. And one of the very first things you found was in Article 2, Objectives, item number G. It says, in general, to uphold the principles of freedom, equality, and justice on which the Republican Party and the government of this nation is founded, as set forth in the Constitution of the United States and Florida. So how do you feel your race went with regard to what the Republicans are actually touting?
They absolutely, there was no equality. They chose their preferred candidate, the establishment players. They didn't, as I found when I went through the list of all the people, what I realized is every single person that lost their race was a real live America First candidate. All the other ones were very ambiguous. They had just, typical political wording, trying to pander to everybody. Nothing hard, nothing America First. I didn't see any America First, but all of us who lost were real live America First candidates.
And there were a lot of you that lost. I know there's going to be some lawsuits happening. I'm not going to mention any names, but I know there's some lawsuits coming. Also, let's talk about the RPOF, Republican Party of Florida Party Rules of Procedure, Republican State Executive Committee. Rule 8 states, and I quote, the State Executive Committee may endorse, certify, screen, or recommend candidates in contested Republican primaries only upon unanimous approval of the Executive Board and the approval of 60% of the State Executive Committee at a meeting called for that purpose at which a quorum is present. Did you get a call for a meeting?
I never heard anything. The only call I got was in April telling me, sorry, and this was, I guess, the Republican House Campaign Committee saying, sorry, we endorsed your competitor.
And you got that call when?
That was before even the qualification period.
Yeah.
So how did they even know? Sorry.
I was at an RPOF meeting in April, and I had a state committee man from Lake County, and he just matters of factly wanted all the incumbents automatically endorsed. And I believe it was our treasurer Mobley that got up and said, hey, we'll have to refund the people's portion of that goes to the RPOF if that happens. And the guy just looked around, and then I heard some people in the audience, if not him, say, well, they'll find another way. And, so I didn't actually hear. There was no vote that was even taken. There was the point taken that they would have to waive that $600. And I'm sure Kris never got a refund of that $600, so it never happened,
I want to real quickly, I want to talk about Barbiana Ocasio-Cortez's comment here. She says, I do believe there's at least one Citrus County commissioner who is on the elections canvassing board who endorsed Missoula openly. And I want to talk about that for a split second, Kris. I know you don't know about this, but people in Citrus County do. Ralph Missoula, who was running against Dr. Paul, put out on social media that he had the endorsement of all 5 county commissioners, and he used their titles as county commissioners. And one of them was on the canvassing board. Let's talk about that for a minute. Dr. Paul, is that a conflict?
I believe it's a straight conflict. Even, okay, there's 5 commissioners. 2 commissioners go on the canvassing board. One's an alternate. I was at the Liberty Caucus where I heard that, and I declared at that time the fix is in. I'm fed up of our supervisor of elections says, I'm not going to report this. I'm not going to do that. I'm not doing this. I'm sorry. They've destroyed my political career, ever since I entered politics with these stupid rules that they break and they don't want to enforce. And I've had retaliation on my campaign ever since I found a sitting commissioner with also some other citizens that were a sitting commissioner that resides in the state of Georgia. Okay. And I can't get that rectified by regular means. It's ridiculous. I'll have to go through extraordinary means to get that rectified. But I've had retaliation ever since that time. And it's ridiculous. People are on these canvassing boards endorsing my opponent. I have my own party, like I said, donating illegally to my opponent. And I'm telling you something, we don't have a democracy in the state of Florida anymore. And I'm sorry, this election was the turning point where the Republican Party turned into the Republican Party of my youth, where Rockefeller and Javits toast champagne glasses when the working classes. I had enough of that party. I'm not bothering with it anymore. And there was a massive amount of conservatives that had their own breakaway party because they're fed up. I'm not going to put up with the Republican Party being the elite party, the party of multimillionaires, and just giving everybody else a hard time because, as far as I'm concerned, they're not the America First Party anymore. They're not the Conservative Party anymore. And that ended August 23rd of this year.
Okay, let me move on to Rule 8, endorsements B. County Executive Committee, now we're talking about the REC. County Executive Committee may endorse, certify, screen, or recommend a Republican candidate in a contested Republican primary or a registered Republican in a nonpartisan election or a local unitary special election by either of the two following methods. One, upon the affirmation vote of not less than 60% of the county executive committee present and voting at a duly called meeting complying with notice requirements set forth below, provided that the number voting to endorse represents a majority of the full committee, or number two, upon the affirmation vote of not less than 2/3 of those present and voting at such meeting, provided that a quorum is present at the time the vote is taken. Each announced candidate shall be likewise notified that a vote on endorsement is to be taken, that he or she will be allowed to speak at such meeting in support of or opposition to any proposed endorsement, certification, or recommendation for an office for which he or she is a candidate. I'm going to tell you why I read that. As we all know, or well, Kris actually probably doesn't know, but I have been kicked out of the Rhino Executive Committee locally. However, I do get their audio recordings of their meetings. And in almost a year and a half since I started attending and was since that time kicked out, I have never seen ever, not even one time in that over a year, I have never seen a vote of any kind at the REC. Now, given what I just read to you, the County Executive Committee may endorse, certify, screen, or recommend a Republican candidate. This is what I want to talk about. What have you, Kris, have you been to the REC in your county? Have you ever seen a vote of any kind? What happens at the REC meetings in your county?
I'll tell you the truth. I am not an REC member. So I have never been to any of their meetings. I do know I never received a phone call though, asking me to come on in.
Oh, see, there you go. Paul, I know that you go to their meetings regularly. Have you ever seen a vote of any kind other than some type of openly slanderous vote where they allowed people to publicly speak and slander people that were attempting to join the REC? Have you seen any other vote?
I saw a vote at the last meeting where Finnegan and Blaze and Gloglia and also one other candidate, I believe, was given at least $2,000 for their campaign from our treasury. The money's raised through the the Lincoln Day dinner. So they did give money to certain candidates, and it was kind of said by I think our state committee man that that he doesn't know how they did it with favoring some people before the primary, but he claimed he didn't know about the details of how they were able to do it. But that came out, but the actual vote came to give I think it was Finnegan, Blazing Gloglia, and one other candidate $2,000 for their campaign. That's the only vote that I ever saw.
And when did that vote take place?
That vote took place at the last month meeting
That's what I
at the
thought.
REC.
So,
At the REC.
30 days out from the election.
Right.
Okay.
And like I said, I think every single one of those candidates that got the $2,000 was a multimillionaire anyway. So so it's like ridiculous, actually. You know what I mean? That they didn't need it, they got it. But what could I say? Don't starve your candidate, don't starve the troops in a primary and give campaign staff to a guy worth $64 million. That really rubs me the wrong way, and I don't like the way I was treated lately by that party. But I'm staying in the REC, okay? And Kris, just so that you know, any Republican can attend the REC meetings. Totally, you have to be a Republican. You go there, you go sign in as a guest, okay? And if you do want to join the REC, and I'm not telling you to join or not join, but you have to be there. I think the rules are 3 out of 4 sequences, and then you could apply for it. But you're allowed to attend their meetings just because you're a Republican. I just want to make you aware of that, and that's true statewide. So you may want to show up and see what they have to say.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Kris.
Okay, just a feeling I have, for instance, like with Dr. Paul's race. Okay, the guy put $1.5 million into his campaign account. He didn't need another $3,900 for staffing. And as I see that, it led me to believe it's not necessarily about the money. I think that is the signal to supervisor of elections and or whoever saying, this is our chosen candidate. Here is how the numbers are going to play out. Because, why would you give money to a guy that has $1.5 million in his account versus Dr. Paul, who, had little to nothing? I mean, that just doesn't make sense to me. Again, other than the fact of it's like, hey, here's our choice. This is the person we've chosen. So now all your supervisors of elections make sure this happens. I can't substantiate that, but it's a feeling.
But I substantiate. They're so brazen with doing that. They threw out a banana peel, and I guess they're all going to fall on it.
So, all right, I want to move on. So here's another thing that the Rhino Party of Florida has in their rule book here. Rule number 9 is an oath of party loyalty. It says form of party loyalty oath as a condition of membership on a Republican executive committee. Each county Republican executive committee and state Republican executive committee member must sign and file an oath in the form of a party loyalty. Here's what it says. I swear or affirm that during my term of party office, I will not actively, publicly, or financially support the election of any candidate. Number 1, seeking election against the Republican Party's nominee in a partisan unitary general or special election that includes a Republican nominee. 2, who is not a registered Republican and is seeking election against a registered Republican in a nonpartisan election, except that this provision does not apply to judicial races under Chapter 105 Florida statutes. I further swear or affirm that in my capacity as a Republican Executive Committee member, I will not support in a contested Republican primary election the nomination of one Republican candidate over another, or in a nonpartisan election, the election of one registered Republican over another, unless the executive committee has voted to endorse that candidate in accordance with RPOF Rule 8, which we already talked about. This provision does not preclude me from supporting in any manner my personal Republican candidate of choice in a contested Republican primary election, or my personal candidate of choice in a nonpartisan election, not seeking election against a registered Republican, provided I do not express such support with public reference to my title or office within the Republican Party of Florida. What do you have to say to that, Kris?
Well, Paul Renner, the head of the House Republican Campaign Committee, endorsed my competition. So I guess he wasn't following the rules. I don't think there was any votes taken. So
he did the same thing to Mazzullo too. I got his little head on Mazzullo's mail outs and posts as well. This guy Renner, and I'm just saying they this House Republican committee that you're talking about, they were responsible, I think, for the first two largest mail outs of Ralph Mazzullo as well, this House Republican committee. So they mailed out one, if not two, and they were very large sheets of paper. I made sure I saved them. They're much larger than the mail outs that he made under his campaign account. But even the campaign account is highly questionable from what I'm seeing,
Oh, I got in my personal mailbox at least 4 mailers from the House Republican Campaign Committee for my opposition.
Right.
So, guys, let me ask you this. I mean, I know that our races for 2022 are over. What can we do to change the situation? And what are you going to do?
You want to field that one, Paul?
Yeah,
You can make it general, not specific.
In general, there's research being done on my legal counsel as well as myself. I'm checking out a lot of causes of action because it looks like to me this type of thing has to be brought by myself and those similarly situated to actually see that this never happens again in any election in the state of Florida. There's equitable relief to be gained by every candidate. And right now I'm expanding it also based on an article I saw about in the Washington Post by Kevin McCarthy. I want, in excess of $10.5 million was sent down to defeat people like Laura Loomer and also Anthony Sabatini. So we're talking about big scale thing, and I'm researching now the involvement of the RNC with our congressional candidates as well. I have a vested interest in being a candidate. Like I said, the tortuous interference with the campaign is considered a business. So I'm going to look heavily into that. And apparently the rules look like they were broken. I feel insulted both as a candidate and as a voter. And the governor is all about election integrity and all this. So we shall see, but a lot of research is being done. A lot of people are advising me around the state. A lot of people are looking at this group of people that we have, and it's a shame. And as far as I'm concerned, like I said, August 23rd was the death of the America First, conservative candidate in the state of Florida. And I'll be damned if I'm going to let it turn into 1970s New York Republicans, because they were the worst.
I appreciate everything you had to say, Dr. Paul. And I'm assuming that Kris is on board with what you had to say. However, I intended to go just a little bit lower level than that. What would you say to the guy who's looking to run in the future? What would you say?
Me personally, honestly, if things continue the way they are, there's no point. My personal opinion would be, why even go through the primary scenario when we should all just be applying to sending our applications into the RPOF, and if they approve you, then you can go to the general, and if they don't, you can go home and not waste your money. I funded my own campaign, and I know what I could have done with that money for my family as opposed to just throwing it out the window. It would have been better throwing it out the window in a poor neighborhood. At least I would have gotten some gratification.
What do you think, Dr. Paul? What do you have to say to that?
I think the saving grace is like my brother and I, when we were growing up in the New York City housing project, again, champagne toasting Republicans. That's why we had ever since 1962 to the current, trying to speak to people that I know in the New York State Conservative Party. If you want a conservative, you vote conservative. We had that as row C. I voted for Ronald Reagan, my first vote, and it was under the Conservative Party. My family, my brother and myself, we were never Republicans. My mother and grandfather were, but I voted for conservatives. They happen to be James Buckley. We got the first U.S. senator in, third party, conservative senator, U.S. senator from New York State. And I'll say that again. You're going to vote for a conservative, look for a conservative. Maybe that doesn't particularly have to be in the Republican Party anymore, at least in Florida. And it's kind of that way in New York State. So
I'm going to throw a thought out here for both of you, and then I'm going to give you an opportunity to respond to it. There is an organization, a website online called precinctstrategy.com. So what precinctstrategy.com talks about is essentially taking over the Republican Party by filling the open positions in the precincts. In our county alone, Dr. Paul, we have 27 open precincts with no Republican executive committee man or committee woman in them. Some of those precincts have upwards of 10 open positions. Is
Right.
that a viable alternative? What do you guys think?
Well, I campaigned for Scott Adams as a NPA years ago, and he scored, I believe, near 40%, if not higher, as an NPA. Okay, I was an NPA at the time, and I had the state committee man, I think the state committee or the REC chairman, an older gentleman, chasing me down in the streets. He says, Paul, we want you to be a Republican committee man. And, and I laughed because at that time, Beverly Hills was heavily Democrat. I said, who the hell would want to do that in Democrat Beverly Hills? So he was saying, no, it was open. It was open. You know, I jumped in there when I was changed to be a Republican in 2019. Scott Adams was the one that nominated George and myself to the REC. But the funny thing is that seat was still waiting for me. So you live in Florida where there's retired people. They don't want to be bothered. Okay. The clubs that I feel I wasted my time on, a lot of them campaigning, they seem to be retirement social clubs. Okay. That's what we got over here. It's different. The demographics are different in Kris's area than they are with me. So I know Citrus County, you got people dying, you got people going into nursing homes. So there's always a lot of open seats here. You know what I mean? For precinct captains. That type of role was a lot different in New York City or Chicago. I had a friend that was a precinct committee man. He knew he was a Democrat. He happened to know Obama in Chicago. You know what I mean? But those roles of being a controller of your neighborhood, getting trash picked up in Chicago, getting snow shoveled on your streets. That was the role of the old time Democrat committee man in those areas. They do favors for the people. They get them jobs. Okay. We don't have that type of system. Oh, your son's looking for a job. I'll get him something in the city of Chicago. That's what was done. We don't have the capability here. We have youth coming down here that can't find jobs, that has to work in minimum wage jobs a couple of times a couple of jobs to support themselves. So we don't have that built-in structure in Florida that the cities do in Chicago, and even in New York City. The Democrat clubs there would get people a job at the city sanitation or something. So it was always something for something in those committee seats. And frankly, the way people act in these clubs, it's just a retirement entertainment type system. It's a social club, and that's why we have social cliques, and we don't have activities that are for the working person, at least in my area. So that's why they're empty. I'm just saying.
Okay. So, Kris, I want to give you an opportunity to respond. What do you think about what precinctstrategy.com is doing, what I just told you about, filling those seats with conservatives who could potentially make change?
I think I mean, it sounds interesting. I'm gonna definitely have to check out their website. But as I've kind of off topic, but on topic, as I've gone down these different rabbit holes and I'm doing research and I'm finding from the top down, every aspect of the tops of the parties are all linked together, and it trickles down through all the different organizations. I mean, I'll have to share with you some of this data I've found. Everybody's linked to each other, addresses. It's just a lot of fishy stuff from the top down. I mean, I guess a ground up way is a good way to help solve this issue, but I don't necessarily know that it's the end all be all. I think we have to attack it from every angle, because from the top, they're just going to keep filtering their people back in. So, I mean,
yeah, because they're attacking us from every angle.
Exactly. And like in my race, for instance, she was chosen because her brother was in office and he got term limited out. So there's already the ties to the party, ties to the money, ties to the endorsements. And then as I was going through her brother's campaign account from this year, and even hers, a lot of fishy spending. So these people they're enticed by the money. They're using it for not the right things, as I would see. But they're all putting their buddies in it.
Right.
So it's hard. It's going to be a hard. This is a hard thing to tackle, to be honest. And we got to take it from every end.
It's actually a situation of high nepotism, because I first hit Tallahassee in '94, and the people that got timed out, suddenly they have a brother or a sister or a son, popping into the legislature. They usually start in the Florida House, go up to the Florida Senate, go to Congress, and that's the usual routine. But what I was shocked about, I went to the RPOF twice back when I ran in 2020 and April. These people are old. I was shocked about the RPOF the people that are there, the committee men and all that. We're looking at 80-year-olds. Right. So I turned around with my brother. I said, what's the future of a party where these guys want to hold on, they want to hold power, and they got one foot in the grave? Right. Okay, what's going to happen here is, what are they going to change? The demographics with the immigrants coming over, and then suddenly we're going to have it with turnpikes and everything else, and we'll have Miami people over here. And what's it what's it going to be handed over to say the Democrats? It looks like they can't bat their way out of a paper bag, these old bums at the RPOF. And and I'm a member of the state party, and it's ridiculous. I'm 61 years old, and I felt like a child in the place. It's ridiculous. Go to one of these RPOF meetings and take a look how old they are. it's like they're grabbing at us from the grave. And I don't think these people are reflective of what we need. The young Republicans in my county don't freaking exist, and this is what's going on. Why would there be any young Republicans when they have to run out of state to get a decent paying job?
Well, and they've all been disheartened by the whole system in general, so they really
Right.
stay away politically because they have the mentality of, well, I can't fix it, I can't do anything, and I'm not saying they're wrong, but they're kind of wrong, because if united we stand, divided we fall, and this is why they are destroying us, because we're divided.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, so we are going to run out of time here, guys. We've got a couple of minutes. Here's what I want to know. Kris, what's on the horizon for you? I'm not talking like specifically, I'm talking generally. What's on the horizon for you? Are you going to continue to fight? Are you going to look to run again? What's on the horizon for you? And Dr. Paul, same question to you. But Kris, go ahead first.
Personally, I was born to fight. This is just what I do. I've been a salmon swimming upstream my whole life, and I'm not going to quit now. There is no holding me back. So I'm hoping to get this issue solved so that races are fair for the future and for other people. That's the only way we're going to solve any of it. I mean, there's too many. The problem is there's too many fires that the left and the uniparty, the right, the uniparty sets, that we're all so confused on where to go. And this is why Dr. Paul and I have united as a team, and we're going to tackle them all.
All right. Barbie Ann Ocasio says, I already know Paul Reinhardt's answer. Your turn, Paul.
Yeah, I'm going to continue fighting. I like Kris's attitude. I'm glad we hooked up. I'm glad to hook up with the coalition that he made of screwed conservatives. Okay. We will prevail. Okay. Whether we prevail with the current Republican Party or not, that remains to be seen. Okay. And I guarantee you one thing, we're gonna duke this out for as long as it takes. And believe me, you're going to see us both again in 2024. And, the message will be blown back to McCarthy in Washington that it's the worst nightmare that he ever came up with in his party to send his crap down to Florida.
Well, I hope so. So we only have about 3 minutes left, gentlemen. Are you going to keep me updated on what's going on?
Absolutely.
What is the number one thing you want people to know right now tonight, Kris? You got 1 minute.
I just say keep the faith, stay strong, stay armed, believe in our republic, and we just got to fight together.
All right, Dr. Paul, you got 1 minute.
I'm going to fight that your vote actually counts and that nobody buys a seat in my state. You get the hell out of here. You want to spend money? I'll kick you in your rear end, go somewhere else, go to some other corrupt state. If you want to turn this one into a corrupt one, this is my rock. Get off of it.
I like that, guys. And I'm excited for you to keep me updated on what's happening. I know Dr. Paul is in my county, so he'll probably be helping me out with some other items, Kris. But I hope you will pop back and tell us what's going on and kind of keep us up on the steps so that we know what's going on in the future with you.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, no, I'm excited to have you. All right, gentlemen, this is all the time we have got for tonight. So until next time, what's in your closet?